Millionaire discovers crying triplets in hospital. What they revealed will transform everything. Jack Thompson, the tech titan of Cedar Grove, nestled in the heart of Texas, had everything. A booming startup, a luxurious house, and a loving family. Yet as he sat in a sterile hospital room for his regular checkup, a gnawing emptiness settled in his chest. The walls of success felt constricting, suffocating, reminding him that his relentless chase for validation might cost him his very soul. A sudden, piercing cry shattered his thoughts, drawing him into the nearby nursery. There, he found 3 tiny triplets wailing in unison, their fragile bodies bundled in hospital blankets. Abandoned, he learned, after a tragic accident had taken their mother. Bewildered, Jack took a step closer, his heart aching for the little souls who had already experienced such loss. Should he intervene? He felt the urgency well up inside him, another call to action. Who was he to make a difference? The bravado that had built his company now felt dwarfed by this moment. He had always prided himself on his accomplishments, but here, crouched before the inconsolable infants, he questioned everything about his relentless ambition. Would investing in the triplets' future drown out the noise of his own abandonment issues? The guilt nagged at him. Was he now just seeking validation through their care? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days turned into weeks as Jack found himself increasingly visiting the hospital, absorbing their every cry and coo. He learned the mother was not just ordinary, she was a brilliant scientist nearing the finish line with a revolutionary health technology that could potentially save millions. A rush of responsibility flooded him. The shadows of his own family's unfulfilled dreams resurfaced. His father, a once aspiring writer, had wilted in the face of practicality. Jack felt the same creeping dread now. What if he too succumbed to fear and retreated into the safety of emotionally disconnected success? His board members called him reckless, voiced their skepticism openly. Risky investments in unproven technology? Who would endorse this plan? They missed the essence of what drove Jack now: the promise of the triplets, their bright eyes filled with innocence and hope, a legacy their mother left behind. The tension mounted with his rival creeping back into his life, a whispering specter from his past, ready to pounce on these vulnerabilities, undermine everything he built. Jack lay awake at night, caught in a web of sleepless turmoil. The urge to protect the children, to give them a fighting chance, rattled against the familiar pull of greed and ambition. What was he willing to sacrifice? As he faced his reflection in the bathroom mirror, he could see the uncertainty manifesting in his eyes. True success weighed heavy on him now, pressing down like a weight he had never anticipated. With each passing day, he felt the stakes rise. That he stood on the brink, caught between his past and an uncertain future. The moment to present the groundbreaking technology was approaching, but would he crumble under pressure, or step up for the family legacy that stirred something deep within him? His heart raced, and just as he steadied himself to take the leap, a harsh digital ping broke through his thoughts, a message from his rival that threatened to tip everything into chaos. There it was, the looming abyss of uncertainty, and Jack was left grappling with a paralyzing question. What would he choose, his ambitions or the family he yearned to protect, the legacy of a woman he'd never met, who had unknowingly ignited a fire within him? The ringing of Jack's phone jolted him from his thoughts, his heart racing as he squinted at the screen. It was a message from his rival, Mark Reynolds, a shrewd businessman with a knack for exploiting the weaknesses of others. Heard you've been distracted, Jack. Are you sure you're ready for the presentation? As the words settled in, Jack's gut tightened. He had poured every ounce of energy into defending the triplets' future, yet here was a reminder of the pressures that accompanied ambition, someone always waiting to rip the rug out from under him. He took a deep breath to steady himself, realizing that this confrontation was just about saving the triplets but also about proving to himself that he could rise above doubt. Jack's mind whirled with conflicting emotions. Seeking validation through the triplets, or seizing an opportunity to honor their mother? He decided on a path he would confront Mark head-on. No longer would he cower in the shadows of his rival. Jack meticulously crafted a response, determined to come across as unfazed and resolute. "I'll see you at the presentation." With each keystroke, a surge of determination swept over him. This wasn't just business, it was personal. For the first time, it felt like the stakes surged beyond profits and losses. The bloom of potential that was vibrant with the triplets in mind was at risk. Once sent, Jack put the phone down firmly, allowing himself a moment of reflection. His mind shifted back to the triplets, their tiny fingers and whimpers stirring something deep within him. They represented new beginnings, hope, and the possibility of becoming more than just a tech mogul chasing ephemeral successes. Nurturing their future had awakened him to the fragility of his own legacy. Fighting for them was not just about achieving success, it was about transcending it. But what did that truly mean for him? Could he face the judgment of his peers and share the vision that interwove his heart with theirs? As the days melded into one another, Jack resolved to embark on a journey of impact. He immersed himself in research about the technology their mother had almost perfected. The more he learned, the deeper his sense of purpose became. Every piece of data was not only another step towards saving the triplets but also a chance to fight back against the emptiness he felt in a life governed by profit margins. However, with that sense of purpose, fear thrummed beneath the surface. Would the board accept a plan roped together by a narrative of compassion rather than cold hard numbers? The looming presentation stirred another wave of anxiety. He began to craft his speech, determined to highlight the emotional and moral imperative behind investing in the technology, the very heartbeat of his argument. That night, Jack rehearsed in front of his bathroom mirror, visualizing the skeptical expressions of his board members. Could he transform their doubts into belief? "This isn't just business, it's our responsibility to ensure a legacy," he declared to himself. The anger at their dismissive attitudes fueled him. Now, he needed to internalize the significance of what he was fighting for. The night air weighed heavily, and with each repetition, Jack felt an unfamiliar confidence rise within him. The battle ahead wasn't just about technology, it was about blurring the lines between his ambitions and what truly mattered. The moment of truth was closing in. As he closed his eyes that night, determination turned to restless anticipation. He was ready to face the board, desperation and conviction mingling within him, trust in the triplets' future guiding his steps. But as dawn broke, illuminating a world still shrouded in uncertainty, a chilling email notification buzzed through his phone. It was from his legal team, one that could undermine everything he had built, all while balancing the lives of the triplets on the edge. Jack's heart sank as he read through the email, the words blurring momentarily. Legal action. Mark had capitalized on a minor oversight in a contract from years ago, a loophole that could unravel Jack's carefully constructed plan. The weight of the implications pressed down harder than any boardroom scrutinies he had faced. The triplets, innocent and dependent, were oblivious to the turmoil that was beginning to churn within him. He ran a hand through his hair, attempting to dispel the wave of frustration that surged through him. Could this be what Mark had meant? A calculated strike, no doubt intended to rattle him before the presentation. Jack felt the bitter taste of betrayal in his mouth, the realization that Mark had not only challenged his professional ambitions but had turned the very lives he sought to protect into pawns in this high-stakes game. Determined not to let this setback dictate his response, Jack focused on the task at hand. He paced the length of his living room, reviewing the situation with a clarity that came only from deep-seated ambition. The board meeting was just days away, and he couldn't show weakness. He had to convert this anxiety into a strategic advantage. Hours later, submerged in late-night thoughts and restless brainstorming, Jack outlined a contingency plan. If Mark aimed to destabilize him, he had to reveal the depth of his vision to the board. They needed to understand that the triplets weren't just a financial opportunity, they symbolized a transformative legacy. He would frame his proposal around the core of empathy, setting it apart from the ruthless calculations that typically defined their industry. Mark might play the numbers game, but Jack was prepared to weave a narrative that resonated at the human level. The next morning, fortified by resolve, Jack met with his team rather than succumbing to isolation. He gathered his closest advisors, laying bare the challenges ahead. He shared the discovery of the legal snafu, his voice steady but laced with urgency. This isn't just about the triplets, it's about embodying a vision that disrupts norms and updates our very model of ethics in business. Their faces mirrored his conviction, igniting sparks of enthusiasm as they brainstormed ways to shore up the proposal against Mark's impending attacks. As the clock edged closer to the day of the presentation, the adrenaline of focus replaced the anxiety. He refused to allow Mark Reynolds the satisfaction of defeating him through underhanded tactics. Each time the doubts threatened to creep in, he revisited his core motivation: the triplets, the legacy he sought to build. Invariably, those thoughts fueled his determination. The day arrived, the air thick with tension as he walked into the boardroom. Jack took a deep breath, noting the wary glances exchanged among the members. Would they see the humanity in his vision? He had rehearsed relentlessly, now it was time to let them witness the passion that had ignited his journey. As he spoke, weaving together facts, emotional appeal, and the potential for societal impact, Jack's voice gained momentum. His adrenaline surged with every nod he saw from the members. He was no longer just a businessman crafting algorithms, he was a warrior fighting for a cause bigger than himself, championing the future of those vulnerable lives. But when he reached the pivot of his argument, and just as he thought momentum was on his side, the door swung open, an unexpected guest interrupting the carefully crafted flow. It was Mark, bolstered by confidence and an air of superiority, ready for a confrontation that sent Jack's heart racing. The time had come to face not just his rival, but the very essence of what he stood for. Jack's heart raced as he locked eyes with Mark, a whirlwind of emotions surging through him: anger, confusion, determination. Mark stepped into the boardroom with an air of calculated arrogance, immediately seizing the attention of everyone present. Jack could practically feel the weight of anticipation hanging in the air, a palpable tension that threatened to engulf the room. He couldn't back down now. Mind if I join the conversation? Mark asked, a smug smile creeping across his face as he positioned himself opposite Jack. For a moment, Jack considered asking Mark to leave. But this wasn't just about the proposal anymore, it was about asserting his commitment to the vision he had painted for the board. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to remain composed. The stakes couldn't be higher, a moment of weakness could jeopardize everything he fought for. Like I said, Jack began, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him, this is more than just numbers. The impact we can have matters more than the bottom line. Mark chuckled softly, an undercurrent of disdain coloring his amusement. Impact, Jack. That's a nice word for failure. Have you even considered how much this project is going to cost? Profit margins are what we should be focused on. Jack clenched his fists beneath the table, refusing to let anger distract him. He had anticipated Mark's objections, and he was ready. This was the moment to showcase not just his proficient grasp of business but also his conviction. Profit without purpose is a house of cards, Jack shot back, his tone growing firmer. I intend to build something sustainable, something that changes lives, including the lives of the triplets we've discussed. The board members exchanged glances, intrigued yet hesitant as the back-and-forth volley unfolded. This argument could either support Jack's vision or tear it apart. Jack could feel the tension strain the air as he continued, Mark may see this as mere finance, but the triplets represent hope and opportunity. I ask you, how do you want this company to be remembered? Mark interjected, his voice sharper now, by turning a profit, perhaps. Jack let the inquiry sink in, momentarily redirecting his focus inward. He recognized the weakness in Mark's argument, it was devoid of passion. While Mark's foundation rested on financial stability, Jack's stood strong on a vision powered by empathy. Let me clarify, Mark, he stated, his voice unwavering. We're in a pivotal position to redefine success in this business. Think of the legacy we can build. That resonates far beyond profit. The board members leaned forward, sensing the shift. Jack's initial doubts disappeared entirely. This was not only a presentation but a declaration of his values, a portrayal of who he truly was. Then came Mark's piece de resistance, an unexpected question posed with calculating precision, and if you fail, what will that mean for the triplets? It's easy to speak of ideals, but ideals don't feed them, Jack. The room fell silent, Jack's resolve momentarily wavering as the weight of Mark's words struck deep. For a split second, apprehension clawed at him, resurfacing the nagging fear of being unable to protect the very lives he had vowed to defend. But as the silence deepened, Jack found clarity. He saw the triplets' innocent faces in his mind, their laughter, their dreams, and that vision reignited the fire within him. Failure isn't an option, Mark. I've never backed down from a challenge, and I won. Start now. The triplets deserve better, and I will fight for them. With that, Jack noticed the board began to sway in his favor, sympathy and respect replacing uncertainty in their eyes. Mark's grip on the situation lessened as movement ensued, discussion sparked around the table, but just as Jack felt he was gaining momentum, a mobile phone buzzed loudly, an alarming reminder that his fight had only just begun. What now? He wondered, glancing around the room. His breath hitched as someone discreetly raised a hand. It was one of the board advisors, looking oddly troubled. There's been an unforeseen complication regarding the legal matter with the triplets. Jack's stomach twisted painfully. What if this complication was Mark's next play, a veiled strike to shatter his newfound momentum? The question loomed larger than ever, etching dread into the air. As Jack prepared himself for what was coming, he realized this confrontation was only the beginning. What he had stood for would now face the ultimate test, demanding a far deeper commitment than he had ever imagined. The journey ahead promised to be fraught with turmoil, a challenge to his very core. How far was he willing to go to protect what he believed in, and what lay ahead as he faced Mark once more? The advisor's words hung heavily like a storm cloud over Jack's head, momentarily drowning out the restless murmurs of the boardroom. He had come too far to lose his footing now, yet the uncertainty gnawed at his resolve. Can you elaborate? Jack prompted, attempting to inject some control back into the room. The advisor shifted nervously but nodded. It appears we're facing a potential lawsuit regarding the triplets' care. Some new evidence has surfaced, questioning our eligibility for certain funding streams. If we don't resolve this, not only could we lose our financial backing, but our credibility could also be damaged beyond repair. Jack's mind raced, piecing together the implications. Losing credibility would mean losing the chance to implement his vision, the chance to make a difference. The urgency propelled him to a swift decision. We need to act quickly. I'll meet with our legal team. Wait, Mark interjected, his voice sharp with an edge of triumph. This could be the perfect opportunity for you to prove your dedication to your noble cause, Jack. Let us see if you can really fight for those triplets now that the stakes have been raised. The board tensed again, caught in the swell of impending conflict. Jack could feel the eyes of his colleagues, some sympathetic, others skeptical. He felt a fire igniting within him. This was not merely a challenge but an invitation to showcase his conviction. I won't be distracted by petty games, Mark. The fate of those children is more important than your need to undermine me. I'll find a way to make this work. He spoke with an intensity that surprised even himself. The room fell silent, his determination hung palpably in the air as if it could be felt by everyone present. As the meeting adjourned, Jack felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily upon his shoulders. He pushed aside the thoughts of defeat and potential failure. What lay ahead would require everything he had: time, energy, and perhaps most of all, his unwavering spirit. The conference room emptied, leaving Jack alone with the echo of his own heartbeat. He contemplated the daunting task ahead. The legal intricacies loomed large in his mind, but he also wished to tackle Mark's scorn, which had taken root in the room like a computer virus spreading throughout a system. It would take more than a strategic plan to overcome the odds. He needed insight into every aspect of the situation, resilience not just in thought but in action. In the subsequent hours, Jack immersed himself in research. He scrutinized legal precedents and analyzed statistics, consulting experts in nonprofit law and child welfare. His focus should have been limited to the facts, but each moment spent in those dry texts brought the faces of the triplets to the forefront of his mind, drawing him deeper into their plight. The urgency of their circumstance fueled his resolve, igniting a sense of accountability that transcended mere obligation. Confidently, he scheduled a meeting with the legal team. He wanted to ensure every possible avenue was explored, every angle accounted for. He rehearsed potential scenarios in his mind, drilling himself on the dialogue he would engage later. That afternoon, as he anticipated the new round-table session with the lawyers, a fresh notion struck him. Could they invite the triplets to the board to discuss the importance of their future? Would their presence remind all involved that these decisions go beyond spreadsheets and bottom lines? Just as Jack's resolve solidified around the idea, his phone vibrated insistently on the table. It was a text from one of the triplets' caregivers, an unread message that never should have gone unnoticed. "Jack, there is something you need to see about the triplets. Please come immediately." His heart sank, an intuitive understanding surging through him that this was more than just a casual concern. What lay beneath that message could shift everything once more, pulling him deeper into the multitude of challenges ahead. As he grabbed his coat and rushed out of the office, one thought taunted him. Just how far was he ready to go now to ensure their safety? The fight for the triplets was becoming a complex tapestry of struggle, revelation, and perhaps, the hardest lesson of all, confronting the unknown was only the beginning. Jack stepped into the unknown, unsure of the imminent truth that awaited him. What had he yet to uncover about his purpose in this battle? As Jack raced to the hospital, his heart thudded in rhythm with thoughts bouncing around his mind. A knot of anxiety tightened in his chest as he envisioned the triplets, each a fragile thread weaving into the broader fabric of his mission. He was teetering on the edge of potential failure, yet a flicker of hope ignited within him. Each second felt like an eternity as the city blurred past, his mind grappling with countless scenarios. Arriving at the hospital, he fought against the escalating wave of dread. Jack took a deep breath, letting the sterile scent of antiseptics ground him. He navigated through corridors, the walls echoing whispered conversations and hurried footsteps. Finding the pediatric ward, his resolve steeled in anticipation, every crisis offered an opportunity to pivot and grow. "Jack!" A caregiver called out as he entered the ward. "Thank you for coming. The triplets are in here." She gestured towards a room at the end of the hallway, her voice steady but her eyes betraying her concern. He felt a surge of gratitude for her dedication, fueling his own determination. As he approached the room, Jack could hear muffled cries echoing within. He pushed open the door, and the sight that greeted him shattered his heart. The triplets lay in their hospital beds, connected to monitors beeping steadily while nurses busily attended to them. Their tiny faces, once brimming with exuberance, were now etched with discomfort and worry. It was a stark reminder of the stakes involved. "Hey, guys," Jack said softly, forcing a smile as he settled into a chair beside them. "What is going on?" Maddie, the bravest of the trio, blinked back tears. "Jack, we're scared. They say something might happen." Her voice trembled, the sincerity in her gaze pierced through the layers of professional detachment he'd long practiced. Jack's protective instincts surged. These were children who depended on him. He felt a shift within himself, a pivotal moment where personal connection eclipsed his professional ambitions. This was not just about funding or legal battles, it was about their futures. "Nothing is going to happen as long as we stick together," he reassured, fighting against his own rising fears. "We'll figure this out." But Maddie interrupted, "They said something about money. Are we gonna be okay?" Her question dug deeper than anticipated. Just beyond reassurances lay the brutal reality. Jack had been thrust into the contract of care, financial support, and bureaucratic hurdles. The thought of their past happiness dimming because of financial uncertainty gnawed at him. Here was a chance to confront the very issues that had been plaguing him. Jack realized that he had to advocate not only for their present safety but also for their long-term well-being. "I promise, we're going to fight for you," he vowed, his words tinged with the fervor of a personal revelation. The fire igniting within him refocused his purpose not as a mere director, but as a guardian of their lives. Seizing the moment, he decided to act further. "I want to request a meeting with the hospital's administration," he declared. "We're going to talk about better support for you three no matter what it takes." As the idea solidified, Jack's mind raced with the implications. More than just words would be needed, He would need strategies and a support network to truly advocate for the triplets' future. Leaving the hospital, his resolve hardened. He envisioned his next steps, not just for the looming legal challenges, but to create a sustainable support system for them. Armed with a clearer understanding of what was at stake, he welcomed the growing challenges as opportunities for growth. As he stepped out into the crisp evening air, determination pulsed within him. But even as he prepared for the struggles ahead, a new question echoed in his mind: could his vulnerability offer him the strength to confront Mark and dismantle the obstacles before him? A fresh urgency surged through him. Though Jack had always been resolute, this battle was inviting him to rise beyond what he had deemed possible. With the weight of their futures resting upon his shoulders, he steeled himself for the fight ahead. The time had come to face not only the external pressures but the invisible weeds of doubt growing within. Jack stood amid the fluorescent-lit hallway, the sterile walls and clinical air amplifying the tumult of emotion roiling inside him. His thoughts surged and ebbed, colliding with the stark contrast between the sterile environment and the heartfelt turmoil he felt for the triplets. Each pulse of his heart tugged at the gravity of his newly forged commitment, a promise to not only advocate but to fundamentally alter the support system enveloping their fragile world. The drive to challenge the hospital's administration ignited a flame in Jack that had long flickered dimly under the weight of his professional obligations. He needed allies, individuals who could lend their voices to the chorus of concern for the triplets, making the urgency of their plight impossible to ignore. Gripped by the weight of his new resolve, Jack turned his attention to a vital question: who could he rally to his cause? In the coming days, he laid the groundwork, researching best practices and reaching out to contacts within the healthcare sector who had navigated similar challenges. Jack understood that knowledge was power, and he began to meticulously document cases where compassionate care and financial support were successfully intertwined. This was more than a tactical move, it was a revolution of thought for him. He discovered that he had a knack for facilitation, for bringing people together, something he never considered a strength before. At coffee shops and communal workspaces, he held informal meetings with caregivers and friends, gathering insights and establishing connections. Delving deeper into the intricacies of healthcare funding, Jack learned not only about the obstacles but also about the levers he could pull to create change. He was immersing himself in a world that demanded both passion and pragmatic strategies, yet, conversations with Mark, his business partner, grew strained. Mark was focused on profitability and security, concerns that Jack now viewed through a widening lens. Those discussions felt increasingly like barriers to Jack's own evolution. Dissonance settled between them. Jack's intentions, driven by compassion, clashed with Mark's insistence on financial clarity and control. Each meeting became a small battlefield, creating a tension that Jack felt deep down in his core. Jack's resolve was tested as doubts wormed their way into his mind. Was he pushing too hard? Was he risking everything he had established for a cause that seemed nebulous and fraught with uncertain outcomes? The fear of failure clawed at him, but then he recalled the triplets' tearful faces, their trust anchored in his promise. Each wavering thought pulled him back, centering him on the purpose he had embraced. One afternoon, fueled by a newfound conviction, Jack walked into a community center meeting, determined to share his vision. He spoke passionately about the lack of support systems for families like the triplets, framing it as an ethical imperative that transcended financial bottom lines. He presented his research, backed by anecdotes and statistics, hoping to galvanize others to join his crusade. Applause broke out, not just for Jack's ideas but for the heart that infused every word he spoke. He felt a surge of affirmation. He was discovering a voice he never knew he possessed. As the evening wore on and conversations stirred around him, he connected with a woman named Sarah, an advocate for children's healthcare rights. Her extensive experience offered insights and strategies he hadn't even considered. This meeting was pivotal. It felt as though the universe was conspiring to amplify his efforts. Together, they crafted plans to approach the hospital's board, an act that would solidify Jack's commitment to the triplets from fledgling advocacy to a tangible movement. Jack stepped outside, the cool air sharp against the burgeoning fire in his belly. He could taste the shift he was orchestrating, not merely advocating but instigating genuine change. But the deeper he plunged into this fight, the more he understood the necessity of confronting Mark. If Jack was to unlock the full potential of this cause and support the triplets. The rift between them had to be mended. As he exhaled slowly, the looming confrontation filled his heart with a mix of anticipation and dread. Would Mark understand his metamorphosis? Could he ever reconcile their disagreements? Jack knew the time had come for him to articulate his new direction, even if it meant risking everything. The stakes had never been higher. With the weight of his commitment pressing heavily upon him, Jack braced himself for the conversation that could either cement his resolve or unravel everything he had fought for. The sound of the office door clicking shut felt like the finality of a gunshot. Jack stood in the small conference room, the stark white walls enclosing him in an atmosphere that was both sterile and suffocating. Mark sat across from him, arms crossed, an embodiment of skepticism draped in a crisp business suit that seemed to reinforce their growing divide. "Jack, I don't understand where this is coming from," Mark began, his tone already tinged with impatience. "We're running a business. This isn't a charity." Jack felt the familiar heat rush up his neck. He took a deep breath, forcing his voice to remain steady. "It's not just a business. Delivering effective care shouldn't be subordinate to profit margins, Mark. We need to adapt our model. The triplets need us to advocate for them. Adapt? Or throw caution to the wind?" Mark shot back, leaning forward, a flash of anger sparking in his eyes. "You want to risk everything for a cause that's rooted in emotion rather than facts. That's not a sustainable strategy." Jack's stomach twisted at the dismissal. Mark's emphasis on sustainable seemed like a hammer, pounding down on Jack's convictions. Yet something deeper within him surged. The very emotions Mark deemed as frivolous were the forces driving his every decision. "It's about more than just spreadsheets. Think about those families. Their struggles are real and they deserve a system crafted around their needs, not just our bottom line," Jack countered, urging a clarity to pierce through Mark's defenses. Mark scoffed. "This is naive. And risky. What if we fail? What if the board doesn't take us seriously? We have a reputation to uphold." Jack's pulse quickened. Mark's words gnawed at his confidence, but he seized on the moment. "What if we succeed? What if we revolutionize how care is perceived? This is our chance to lead, if not just for the triplets, then for countless others like them." The urgency in his voice mingled with a newfound fervor, igniting a steely determination. Mark's expression shifted, a moment of contemplation flickering across his face before shadows of doubt crept back. "I need to see numbers, Jack. Support. Something concrete," he said finally, folding his arms more tightly against his chest like a shield. Jack sensed the door was half open, but the barricade was still there. In that tense air, Jack caught a glimpse of something profound within himself. This wasn't merely about negotiation, it was a confrontation with his own worthiness. Could he be a transformative force? Did he possess the influence to change not just the lives of the triplets, but the trajectory of their organization? The realization landed heavily in his chest. He had needed Mark's support, a validation of what he felt inside. "Give me time," Jack said, the softness in his voice contrasting the volatility of the moment. "I'll gather data, form a coalition among the staff, and present a project plan that isn't just about emotionality but grounded in strategy. This is too important to navigate without a solid foundation." Mark picked at the edge of a folder on the table, the silence thick with uncertainty. "You realize you're putting everything we've built on the line?" "Yes," Jack replied with surprising clarity. "And that's the point. For once, I'm willing to risk everything for something that truly matters." The tension of the moment hung in the air as Mark's wariness shifted into contemplation. For Jack, surrendering a vision felt paradoxically liberating, a bold step toward claiming his unrevealed potential. There was a whisper of hope that flickered beneath the duty and the fear. Jack felt he was no longer just another cog in the corporate wheel, he was a catalyst poised for change. Leaving that meeting, Jack sensed that he was on the precipice of an important shift. The battle was only just beginning, and he needed to rally others to his side, not just in the clinic, but out there in the community where the voices of the triplets and their families could no longer be silenced. As the door shut behind him, the realization struck: the next step was to confront the hospital's board directly, to leverage everything he had learned and everyone he'd met. But first, there was one critical person he needed to persuade: Sarah. He felt urgency pulse through him. Her insights could be the key to not only tackling administrative challenges but altering the very framework of care for families like the triplets. With a renewed fire igniting his focus and clarity, Jack raced to his car, a specific vision of advocacy blazing in his mind. This was more than a crusade, it was a declaration, a shift in professional identity that would either affirm his new path or irrevocably challenge it. But as he gripped the steering wheel, unease crept back in. What if he stumbled on his next encounter with Sarah? What if she didn't share his vision or drive? The stakes had shifted dramatically, and Jack was about to dive deeper into a world that demanded not only his conviction but a level of collaboration he was still learning to navigate. Determined, he pushed the doubts aside, knowing that the journey ahead would test not only his resolve but his relationship with everyone he cared about. Would he find the ally he sought, or was he forging ahead alone into uncharted territory? As Jack approached the hospital parking lot, a cacophony of noise filled the air, layers of blaring car horns mixed with the shuffling footsteps of medical staff. Each sound reverberated through him like a drum, amplifying his racing thoughts. He took a moment to breathe in, grounding himself, fighting the wave of anxiety that blurred the otherwise clear vision he'd forged just moments before. Finding Sarah would be crucial. He recalled her insights during previous meetings. She had an ability to cut through ambiguity with sharp analysis and unerring empathy. Yet doubt shadowed him. Would she buy into his vision? He needed her to see the potential for transformative care beyond what numbers could show. Inside the hospital, the fluorescent lights hummed like a swarm of bees, bright and clinical. Jack navigated the corridors, the scent of antiseptic wafting thick in the air as he made his way to the administrative wing. Each step felt heavier, weighed down by the potential of rejection. He steadied himself against the wall, taking another deep breath, forcing a wave of confidence to wash over him. He was no longer just a spectator watching the system unfold, he was part of it now, a player ready to ignite change. "Sarah, do you have a minute?" Jack's voice was light, but urgency wrapped around each word. He found her in a small, bright office filled with colorful charts and inspiring posters. She looked up, her face morphing from focus to surprise. "Jack." "Sure, what's up?" She smiled and gestured for him to enter, pushing aside papers that looked important enough to consume her attention. "We need to have a serious conversation," he began, hesitating slightly. His mind ticked through his planned discussions. Was he prepared to advocate this perspective completely? "It's about our approach to care for families like the triplets." Her brows furrowed, concern taking shape. "You mean the case we just looked over?" "I thought we were." "No, Sarah," he interrupted, the urgency pushing out the calm he had intended to convey. "I'm talking about reevaluating our model completely. I feel we need to craft a framework that prioritizes advocacy. Those families deserve our commitment beyond the norms of revenue generation." "Jack, that's a bold statement. You know how the board feels about shaking things up." "I know," he countered, now pacing slightly, "but what if this is our opportunity? There is a gap in our current model. We could be the ones to redefine care, not just for the triplets, but for many others. I can gather data, form a coalition, we could present something concrete, a way to bring together emotion and strategy." Sarah leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. "Look, I appreciate your passion, but have you thought about the consequences? You could risk everything we've built, and for what? A gamble?" Jack felt the pang of her words. Each beat of his heart rose and fell with the gravity of realization. He had spent years conforming, operating within the parameters set by those above him. Wasn't this what he had craved all along? The understanding that it wasn't merely about outcomes, this was personal, vital. He was willing to carve a niche that prioritized meaningful change. "If I don't try, I'll regret it," he replied, meeting her gaze with sincerity. It isn't just a gamble, it's a responsibility. And I need your expertise. Slowly, Sarah nodded, uncertainty mingling with an openness to the idea. Okay, I can help with data. I think you're onto something, but you know the board is skeptical. They need hard evidence. Jack felt a flicker of hope return, igniting the desire burning inside him. He was at a pivotal crossroads, and Sarah's support might just transform this vision into a reality. But the door had not opened fully, the path was still arduous. His heart raced at the possibilities ahead. A thought struck him, a sudden realization layered with both excitement and dread. What if we approached the board as a united front? Not just with hard numbers but stories, the actual voices of the families. He spoke earnestly, the idea gaining momentum as he spoke it aloud, every concept weaving into a formidable strategy. Finding case studies might resonate deeply, Sarah mused, considering the idea. Jack noticed a spark in her eyes as his passion seemed to light a flame in her uncertainty. But beyond the immediate rush of progress, a disturbing thought nagged at him: would they both find the courage to face the board's skepticism head-on? The knowledge of the uphill battle had now merged with the budding hope for collaboration. He felt a thrilling anxiety building around what lay ahead. The challenge loomed larger now, a trepidation mingling with exhilaration. Would his past choices guide him through, or would they be his undoing? As he and Sarah began strategizing their next steps, Jack realized, all too well, that confronting the board would be a decisive moment, one that could either shatter his ambitions or propel him into a new frontier. Jack stepped into the boardroom, and the atmosphere crackled with tension. The faces of the board members were a mixture of skepticism and curiosity, and he could feel the weight of their scrutiny bearing down on him. He had prepared for this moment, armed with the research he and Sarah had gathered, yet the gravity of what he was about to propose felt monumental. The stakes were higher than ever, not just for his career but for the lives of the triplets whose futures hung in the balance. Thank you all for being here today, Jack began, his voice steady yet laced with an intensity he hadn't felt before. I'm not just here to present numbers, I'm here to share a vision that transcends profit margins. We have a unique opportunity to redefine the standard of care in a way that genuinely reflects the values of our organization and addresses the needs of families like the triplets. As he spoke, he could see a flicker of interest spark in the faces around the table. He introduced the case studies, backing his emotional appeal with data that highlighted the disparity in care for vulnerable families. He emphasized the combination of compassion and strategy, challenging them to reconsider their definition of success. We can build a legacy, one that honors those we serve, he declared passionately. Jack's confidence surged as he felt the board members begin to engage. Questions arose, supportive comments punctuated the conversation, and for the first time, he felt the tide shifting in his favor. But just as he thought the momentum was fully on his side, Mark interjected, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. Jack, with all due respect, you're asking us to take our focus away from proven returns and invest in something that's not quantifiable. What makes you think this will succeed? Jack took a deep breath, channeling his resolve. Because it matters, he replied, his voice firm. Imagine being known as the organization that didn't just chase profits but fostered transformative care. We will attract support, not just from investors but also from communities that value compassion. This is a chance to truly demonstrate leadership. He locked eyes with Mark, feeling the turbulence of their past differences dissolve into a shared space of urgency and purpose. This wasn't just about numbers anymore, it was about a mission that transcended personal ambition. As the conversations began swirling around the table, Jack sensed a pivotal shift in the board's dynamics. Some members nodded in agreement with his vision, while others still harbored reservations. But he was ready for this. Encouraged by the supportive members, he leaned into the challenge and called for a vote on moving forward with the proposal as they had discussed. When the final tally came in, a wave of disbelief washed over him. The majority had chosen to embrace the transformation he had outlined. Not only had they acknowledged the potential for change, but they had also agreed to advocate for the triplets' future, marking a significant victory for Jack. "This is just the beginning," he said, the gravity of the moment sinking in. The realization rushed over him: he had not only convinced others of his vision, he had grown into a leader who could leverage compassion to effect real change. He felt a wave of satisfaction as a mix of relief washed over him. In the days that followed, Jack immersed himself in the development of the new care model, collaborating with Sarah and the board to finalize their plans. As they translated their shared vision into actionable strategies, he began to see his own transformation reflected in the excited conversations among his colleagues. They were no longer just following an idea, they were building a movement. Jack developed a direct line of communication with the caregivers of the triplets, inviting their input and reinforcing a community-focused approach. During these conversations, he learned about their hopes and fears, grounding his resolve in the very real implications of their well-being. It reinforced his understanding that every step he took was not merely a professional accomplishment, it was personal. And then came the moment that defined it all. A community event was scheduled to celebrate the launch of their new initiative. As he stood before the audience, he recalled the cries of the triplets that had first compelled him to step onto this path. He spoke directly to them, infusing raw emotion into his words while detailing the journey that had transpired. "This initiative isn't just about healthcare," he said, his heart pounding with fulfillment. "It's about dignity, hope, and redefining what success means. It's about our commitment to honoring lives in all their complexities. Together, we will build a legacy that meets this challenge head-on." The applause that erupted felt like a culmination of his struggles. He had not only conquered his own doubts but had turned those challenges into a catalyst for change. As he looked out into the audience, he saw the triplets' caregivers beaming with pride, their faces reflecting the deep, abiding trust they had placed in him. He had won their hearts. He had proven to himself that true success wasn't only rooted in wealth or accolades, but rather in the impact he could have on others' lives. Jack Thompson, once entangled in the pursuit of validation, had emerged as a leader motivated by purpose and empathy. In that moment, he not only achieved a professional milestone but found, irrevocably, that fulfillment came from service. And as he left the stage, the echo of applause merging with the knowledge of the transformations ahead, he understood that this wasn't an end but a beginning, one that would continue to resonate in ways he had yet to imagine. You need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it really makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to support a narrative of personal overcoming and profound transformation.